Hey, what's up, Unbroken Nation? Curious, and I haven't heard anyone ask you this, so I want to ask you, like, how did this become your route? And why is it so important to you now, probably more than ever, that we start to have a deeper conversation about what healing trauma actually is?
Such a good question. The work itself routed me into trauma. I kept seeing almost the same narrative, just in a different person's life, showing up over and over again. And when I started seeing so many commonalities, I kept thinking we have to address the root. And what I mean by that is I especially started seeing the commonalities showing up when I was still in training. So when I was in training, I trained at Columbia University in my doctorate, and then the clinical training that I was able to procure was at Columbia Medical Center, and I was still an extern there, which means it's just a part of the psychological training. And I kept listening to what felt like the same story, but from client to client, and kept feeling this urgency as such a like a new clinician, this urgency to make it stop. Like, these cycles aren't broken and what's going on? We need to do something about this. And there were some people that were actually being seen for decades in this hospital. It happens in hospitals all over the nation. And I kept thinking, like, why are people unwell decades later? Why is that happening? Why are they still suffering in very much the same ways that they were when they first came to us? And so it really created this line of inquiry for me around what the root cause had been that had kept these people in this state of suffering for such extended periods of time. And I landed at trauma, and I landed at generational trauma, meaning there were people in their families that had also gone through things in generations past, and people hadn't resolved these things because they didn't have access, or because they just didn't have the motivation to do some of the work, the healing work. And so all roads kept leading to trauma. So I do believe that in many ways this work found me, and I just went along with it because that's what the people needed.
That's really beautiful. Yeah, I get it. That's very much my experience. My background, having an ACE score of 10, being a homeless drug addict at 12 years old, seeing really the worst of humanity, and then me had this interesting conversation with Dr. Gabor Mate. We're talking about disease and depression and stuffing it down, and that's what I did for a very long time, which so many people do. It's almost normative, right? That
Yeah.
escape, that dissociation, until eventually it like rose up and it was like, hey, dude, pay attention. And that pay attention for me was like this series of about 1,000 rock bottom moments, which then, of course, has turned into a very different transformation and hoping and seeing the amazing work that we can do as a human species and race when we come together to have the conversation about generational trauma. I think that the more that we do that, the more that we empower people to do what I'm going to call the hardest thing that we do, and that's ask for help. And when I think about asking for help and I look at like my own journey, it almost felt like stepping off of a cliff, right? I'm like, oh, shit, I guess I better do this because if I don't, nothing's going to be different. And I
Mhm.
started getting back into my body, like maybe even for the first time, right? When you talk about healing, and I know a huge aspect of your language is around the somatic experience, why is it so important for us to get back into our body? And how do we do that after trauma?
Well, a large part of the reason why it's so important to get back into the body after you've had a traumatic experience is because trauma disconnects you from your body. Trauma makes you experience your body as feeling like it's on fire in a constant alarmed state. And it's a place that no longer feels like home. It feels like the place you want to escape. So, in order to help a person to feel more centered, more integrated, it's going to be critical for there to be a body based component to the healing journey. It has to be, because the disconnection occurs when trauma happens. Reconnection needs to occur when healing happens.